Hello and welcome to What the Lux with me, Fred Moore.
And me, Anand Sharma.
Together we lead Matter of Form, a design consultancy specialising in brand, digital experience and content. And this is a podcast that calls time on tired ideas of luxury.
Alongside industry luminaries and thought leaders, we explore what truly defines category-leading products and services.
Today on What the Lux, we're joined by Alex Robertson, a leader who has helped redefine modern luxury hospitality on a global stage. From shaping guest experiences at some of Jumeirah's most celebrated properties to steering the group's evolution worldwide, Alex brings a rare blend of operational precision and emotional intelligence. Now, as VP of Brand, he's leading the charge to honour tradition while crafting the next chapter of contemporary Arabian hospitality. Alex, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a joy to be here.
People like podcasts today because, I hate to say this, but we're becoming a little more socially inept and we have less opportunities for serendipitous conversation.
Yeah.
And the result of that is that people want to plug into what feels like a living room or an informal, casual social occasion.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's why the format has taken off, because what people seek is the feeling of social connection when they walk around all day with their AirPods in, Ubering their both driver and dinner to their living room. And so because we've used technology to over-optimize so many aspects of life, we have optimized, like, you know, and it's a cliche, but like the water cooler moment, the serendipitous conversation, you know, the interaction that ultimately, when they add up, leave you feeling connected and, and less lonely, you know. But, and so we're pumping podcasts into our AirPods as a result, which is funny, isn't it?
I think it's one of those things, though, that people are actually trying to find more meaningful ways of connecting with one another.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at all of the data, it all points to just an absolute confluence of, you know, things going wrong. And so when you have things like podcasts, which gives you the ability to essentially have technology solve your problem, but at the same time not necessarily go down a rabbit hole of poor choices or scrolling or instant gratification, I think it's a good way of connecting.
Yeah, totally. And they're long form. You know, what's so interesting is these like 3-hour conversations, you know, whether it's Rogan or Bartlett or whoever, you know, or Modern Wisdom, you know, people are really plugging into extended conversations about things. And I think that's like quite nice.
I think there's an innate desire to slow down.
Totally.
I think that people want quality in their lives. I think that there's a natural instinct to find beauty in moments that are real. And I think that people somewhere in their subconscious know that those moments that are real are coming from moments that are slower, more engaging, where you're not necessarily moving through it in a passive environment. You're actually actively participating. And so I think that, you know, you look at Substacks, you know, becoming the most, the most consumed way of people getting information. You look at Goodreads taking off as the forum where people want to have dialogue with one another, and then the actual in-person, in real life. The podcast is sort of the hybrid, isn't it?
Yeah.
I haven't quite found my tribe or who can have a conversation about this, but I can join a conversation for 3 hours and it's a good life.
100%. I feel like luxury plays a role in that as well.
Yeah.
You know, luxury's sort of become, I mean, I end up talking about this quite a lot as well, but it's like a premium to take the slower path, you know, and some of the work that we've done together at Jumeirah has been about trying to force people back into attention and to play with the traditional formats of hospitality to get people to just pay attention, and by doing that appreciate the moment, you know, and connect, you know, with both the cultural environment they're in, the context they're in, but also with each other.
I think that luxury strives to invite people to experience things. Because I think that inherently the definition of luxury is that it is madness. It's an overvalued product in any industry. It doesn't matter if it's fashion or hospitality or automotive. It's the definition of luxury is that you have an innate desire to feel something, and it creates an experience for you and a feeling within you that then rationalizes an overspend. And so you have to have this willingness to invite somebody to experience it and to slow down. And if you don't invite someone to do that, then you're inherently asking them to move through something quickly. And that's not what we want to do. We want to have people actually come out of the other side of the experience with a story to tell, or a feeling that's been changed, or an emotion that's been triggered, hopefully a positive one. That's a big part of why I think luxury hospitality is becoming a huge industry that other industries are looking to, and other verticals are looking to Because inherently, when we say the words luxury, everybody's mind goes to fashion
Totally.
or jewelry, sometimes automotive.
Bang on. I think handbags.
Yes.
And it's like,
Hermes.
that's not luxury.
Great.
Necessarily.
But if you look at luxury hospitality, I mean, we have all of the keys there. We have the price point, we have the audience, we have the spending power, we have the experience, we have the service delivery, we have the actual product itself, and all of those things are being combined together. And I think that's a big reason of why a lot of traditional luxury brands, the fashion brands particularly, are entering into the space, because they want to get closer to a customer, because customers want experiences, and people, all of the data points to people wanting to spend more money on experiences. And that's where luxury hospitality has been doing it right for a very long time. In luxury hospitality, we'll only get customers to come back, our guests to come back, if we actually deliver an incredible service and an incredible experience. And so we don't have the product to reinforce our message. We only have the experience, those 5 days that a guest will be staying with us. And so I think that luxury brands are looking at hospitality going, how can I create environments that serve my customers really well to ultimately expand that purchasing power and actually build these experiences where people are coming with the idea that they're actually going to be immersed in a world, have an emotional feeling, and then the luxury brand obviously is trying to get rid of a product.
Exactly, and it's easy to kind of have a sense of what a good experience might look like, and it's incredibly difficult to make it work.
Yeah.
And your job touches on that. So talk to us about what you do and some of the sorts of challenges that you have to grapple with every day.
Well, I lead all of the Jumeirah brand, our loyalty program, and all of our digital environments globally. And I think a big part of my job is ensuring that we are illustrating or bringing to life the Jumeirah brand in a really compelling but also authentic way. And part of that is defining the narrative for what Jumeirah is going to be. But then a component of that is, what does that look like when it really hits the ground? And when somebody walks into one of our properties globally, what do they feel? How do they engage with our teams? And I think the thing which really sets Jumeirah apart, which is a part of why I love my job so much, is that we're a relatively young brand in the world of luxury hospitality, but at the same time, we have a really rich history that comes from this region. And I think that it's our job.
You're almost like an ambassador for the region.
Yes.
It feels.
Yes, I think along with the airlines who have obviously put the region on the map, I think we are the best illustration of what regionally is something that is oftentimes overlooked, in that the Arabian Peninsula is probably the most hospitable part of the entire world. Arabian hospitality is incredibly welcoming. It's incredibly generous, and that's what comes through in our properties around the world. But we also need to ensure that we pick moments where we can amplify that, define that, and showcase that to our guests so they can have that message reinforced. And that's really where I spend a lot of my time with our teams at a global level and also at a property level.
Is it quite hard? I guess it's one thing delivering a message to an affluent customer at a global level. That already has challenges and complexities to it. You've got to communicate a philosophy internally that is going to inspire a very different sort of person in a service role into a level of conformity that allows you to consistently deliver ultimately the sum of the experiences built of its people, and of course the property and the experiences and the programming. But how do you deal with that challenge? I mean, it must be.
It's difficult. It is difficult. I think we really try to break it down so that we have a core philosophy as a brand. And I think this rings true for any successful brand, especially in luxury space, and that we have to have a really authentic story. Trying to be anything that we're not just doesn't work. And the guest sees through that really, really quickly. So for us, it's really important to ensure that we're always going back to that Arabian origin story. And what does that mean? These pillars of warmth, of generosity, of joy. And that is fantastic as a hospitality provider, because those traits really ring true. When we actually do our internal trainings, when we're speaking to our colleagues, it's about finding ways that they can believe that with one another and actually having that practice communicate across the overall organization. So how we act with one another is really important. It's probably more important than how we act with our guests, because then those traits actually come through in our properties themselves. Our guests want to hear the story. Our teams want to deliver that story. And I think that we have a really powerful story to tell. The piece which we will always struggle with is how do we continue to get a guest to come back and engage, and how do we create those moments of wonder once they've been a first time or a second time or a third time? And I think that's the opportunity that we have in terms of our generosity that lives within us.
Yeah. And like mixing it up a bit, right? Like sort of playing with the sequencing of things so that it's not always the expected rollout of the experience or the interactions.
Well, one of the things that we've been working on, right, is that the moments that tell our story don't have to be uniform everywhere, and they don't have to be at the consistent, precise moment of a guest journey. Everyone's guest journey is different. If you're a family of 4 and you've just gotten off a plane from America, as you have, you're probably just wanting to get to your room and relax. You don't want to go through a welcome ritual that's been predefined by a corporate office. And so I think we give a lot of scope and flexibility to our teams to tell the story throughout moments of the guest journey and design those moments in a way that can be turned up and dialed up at any point in time. That flexibility gives our teams a lot of freedom and also relaxation in delivering that message, because they're not forced to do it when it doesn't feel right. And I think that's a big part of what makes luxury hospitality really special. I don't think luxury hospitality is being intentional all the time. I think it's about being intentional at the right time, understanding our guests,
Couldn't agree more.
listening to them. And actually listening is probably the biggest part of what our colleagues do really, really well. And then by listening to our guests and hearing them and seeing where they are in their guest journey, then we can insert our story at an appropriate time.
Yeah. I guess the hard part with all of that, right, is you can create a culture of individuals who value listening and tailoring, or creating a bespoke kind of, version of the experience on the front line. But when you're a big organization with big growth goals, and so it's capturing insight at scale, and then using and then redeploying, your learnings in a way that feels intimate. Which is the great challenge, right? Yeah,
and that's always going to be the challenge with luxury hospitality. We're trying to create individual, personalized journeys for every single one of our guests, and we want to do that every single day. And I think that, again, it goes back to having a really core foundation, understanding who we are as an organization, having a great product to back it up. Those are table stake requirements. But then giving our teams the ability within a framework to apply that for our different guests around the world.
How did you get into the world of hospitality? Was it accidental? Was it intentional?
It's a great question. I think there are two types of people in the world. There are hosts, and then there are people who like to go to dinner. And I love to host. Yeah. I love to go to dinner. Don't get me wrong, but there is a group of people who love to host. Yeah. And I think that those people inherently gravitate towards hospitality in some form. And so my journey into hospitality was somewhat accidental, but I was always hospitality adjacent. I loved travel, I loved tourism, I loved aviation. And so the journey into Jumeirah was one that was somewhat accidental, but now that I'm here, I feel like it's exactly the place I need to be.
Talk more broadly, what led you to the Middle East?
So I actually came to the Middle East on holiday, again, by complete accident. Yeah. I had a friend who was living here. He was working for Emirates, and he invited me to come stay with him. And he would, when you work for an airline, you get a lot of benefits, right? Yes. So he was always able to visit me wherever I was in the world. Yeah. And finally, I took him up on his offer to visit him. I arrived and immediately fell in love with Dubai.
Okay, you're so interesting. So you're British,
yes,
but with a strong American connection. You grew up in the US,
yes,
and also now live in the Middle East.
Yes.
And so, I think if you're British, you recognise that Britain isn't the most supportive culture for commerce or entrepreneurship. I don't think. I'm not saying it's like really unsupportive, but I just think compared to perhaps the Middle East or the US, that are very entrepreneurial win-win cultures. And I think just by maybe bigger or greater reach or more cash to build, I don't know, whatever. Who knows what the reasons are.
Yeah.
But how would you compare the entrepreneurial spirit of Dubai to the US, for example, which as a Britisher would consider to be more entrepreneurial than Britain?
I think
I'm probably going to get shot down for making that comment, by the way. I don't think Britain's not entrepreneurial. I just think America's extremely entrepreneurial.
Well, I think that didn't the UK have the largest number of exodus of millionaires last year, which I think a massive percentage of those were founders. And so,
companies will go and get their funding. If you're an entrepreneur with a startup, it is widely acknowledged that you use the UK as a test bed, where you sort of sandbox your business idea, so it doesn't, end up, sort of losing its ability to raise VC finance on the hope and a dream that in a way is more powerful than the cold light of revenue. Yeah. And then you kind of go, export the idea to the US.
I think that to answer your question about the difference in entrepreneurialism between this region and the US, in broad general terms, I think it just comes down to scale, current ambition, and then ability to change. And the ability to change somewhat comes from scale. The US is a much larger, more established market. It's just simply true. And so I think when a region such as this decides to have very ambitious goals, which it very publicly has set those goals out, across multiple verticals, when it makes that decision, it can shift an entire populace to focus on achieving those goals. Regulations can be adjusted. The rules can essentially be adapted. Laws can be created in order to facilitate goal success. And so,
although in America you can now make up your own rules as well.
Well, but here regionally, I think that.
But it's funny because I was in Saudi for with a British consulate on a trade trip, sort of touring, the opportunities in Saudi and meeting with other business leaders and this type of thing recently, and it was interesting because I started talking to someone and they were saying they worked in the government and they were saying how, the government, basically things had been very laid back for a long time, and sort of perhaps not everyone loved this entrepreneurial, change led by MBS because it has a real shake-up. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, on the whole, people love it. Love it. And it's a young country, so you can see why. But it was just a drastic change in working culture and cadence. And
I think that's what Dubai had,
which you'd never be able to change that in other countries so easily. And it's actually that comes from sort of singular visionary leadership drawing everything together, right?
Correct. And in the UAE, it's even smaller populace. So when those decisions get made, you can really swing. In Saudi's 34 million people, I think, 35 million people. In the UAE, it's much smaller. And so, the decision to decide to be the world's best in X, Y, and Z, you can go ahead and achieve that.
So how old is Jumeirah as a brand?
25 years.
It's 25 years. When you were at Etihad, weren't you?
Yes, I was at Etihad. So I joined Jumeirah 3 years ago.
You joined Jumeirah 3 years ago. So what was it like working at Etihad and at that point?
Etihad is, again, we're one of the few regions in the world which has 2 flagship carriers in terms of airlines. And so Etihad's goal was to really, very similar to Emirates, is an opportunity to sort of amplify in my opinion, to amplify the sort of the narrative of the UAE. International airlines are a showcase essentially of domestic success. Qatar Airways and Singapore Airlines, etc., Turkish Airlines. These are all essentially, showcases of what a country can do really, really well. And so sort of it was around doing that to an international audience. What Jumeirah, I think, is doing really well is taking a domestic product and then and taking it international. And that's what's really exciting. It's not about bringing people necessarily always to this region. It's about exporting what this region does really, really well into international markets and showcasing what Arabian hospitality is.
What's the growth looking like for Jumeirah?
The mission that's been set out by leadership is to double the size of the portfolio by 2030.
That's huge.
Yeah.
How exciting.
Yeah, it's quite an ambitious target. I think all of the targets in this region are always set out to be big and to be ambitious, because why dream anything else?
So as you've moved into this formidable leadership role, how's your sense of what makes a good leader changed?
A lot. Definitely a lot. I've been really fortunate to work with some incredible leaders. And I think that when I was younger, probably before coming to this region, I think I always thought of leadership as having the right answers to the questions that were being asked. And I think now my perspective on leadership is actually being able to ask the right questions or to ask better questions. I think really good leaders empower their teams to take action and to own their own success, but ask challenging, difficult questions. I also think there's a lot of room for kindness.
Yeah.
I think we have seen, so often you see sort of demonstrative leadership as sort of held up and heralded as successful. And I actually think there's a lot of room for kindness.
I think for our generation in particular, our generation and above, it's it's a very different world.
Yeah.
Like, to be inducted into the world of professional work, there were different ideals.
But there's always room for failure, right? There's always room for abject failure.
Yeah.
And I think we can all probably, I'm not sure if you can, but I can think of the many times where I failed, but I can think of maybe 2 or 3 very clear examples where I absolutely tanked.
Yeah.
And I had leadership who knew I was going to tank, let me tank, and then worked with me to understand the reasons why. And I think those lessons are really, really important, because I think that you need to, as a leader, as I said, ask the right questions, but influence teams, not intimidate them. And if you are able to do that successfully by coaching, by setting the direction, by setting clear mandates as to what you define as success and how success is going to be achieved, I think that teams by and large will achieve that. And I think that you can mitigate the failures by almost ring fencing them and allowing them to happen when it's okay for them to happen. And there are moments where you absolutely can't let it go and you need to get more involved.
How does Jumeirah, as it grows, sort of maintain a sense of its own heritage while navigating the future and, innovating?
I think that it's really important that everything that we do stays grounded in the core essence of the brand. Yeah. And so a lot of work goes into training and storytelling and working with our teams to ensure that they understand where our brand is coming from and where we're going. Then I think it's about identifying the right partners, the right property placements, the right locations around the world that work for our brand, as well as just working for international growth. I believe we don't want to step into places that are that don't fit us as an organization. And we do a great job, I think, of ensuring that we have domestic teams, that we move teams around the world. So inherently, those things, especially in service, that really set Jumeirah apart, are taken to international locations. So we may move a general manager, or we may move a chef, and that understanding of who we are as an organization, and then going to a new place, actually gives us the ability to continue that storytelling. And I think we're always going to look at things like technology and advances in digital and understanding our customers to improve what we do, but it will never take away from the fact that ultimately what we're delivering is incredible service and incredible hospitality.
Yeah. We obviously live in this age of sort of instant everything. What do you think makes luxury just sort of feel real and valuable to that backdrop?
I think that luxury, I have a very strong point of view. Luxury is about craftsmanship. And luxury doesn't necessarily have to be a thing, but how that experience or that product or that place comes to life. I think in order for it to be luxury, it has to have a high degree of craftsmanship. And so I think in anyone's experience, if you ask them about, do you want it really quickly or do you want it done really well? They will always choose really well. And that's what sets luxury apart. And I think that's what people can perceive luxury to be. Now, in some instances, it may be about providing a highly quality product or a crafted product instantly. So no one wants to wait 4 hours for their dinner to arrive on their plate, at a great restaurant. But when it does arrive, you want to see that it's been crafted with care and crafted with quality ingredients. And so I think there is a true understanding that craft takes time. Yeah. And again, about slowing down. In a luxury world, I think an invitation for people to experience that in slowing down, intentionally slowing down and experiencing something, I think is what really sets luxury apart. The moment we start delivering things quickly just because we think that people need them quickly. I think we are just going to commoditize the entire industry.
What are the sort of standout moments that Jumeirah delivers that you think are just exceptional?
I think that we deliver joy really well.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what really sets us apart. I think there's a massive misconception in the industry that in order for something to be luxury, it needs to be pretentious. I would love it if we were just honest with ourselves to say that joyful moments are really authentic. And I think it's those small touches, by delivering incredible service with an incredible product in incredible locations around the world, but then having a little bit of joy and a little bit of playfulness to them. I think that's what really can set us apart.
What are you joyful?
I mean, my favorite moment is at one of our properties here in Dubai. And whenever I get out of a car, one of our doormen, who's actually from Kenya, he's an enormous man. And he'll swing the door open, big hello and a welcome, very, very professional. And then there's a small little fist bump as you walk in. And that's a charming moment that occurred between he and I, 3 years ago at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it's continued to this day, and he remembers it. And I think those are the little things that really take something from being something that anyone could do and making it truly authentic.
What do big brands like yourself do to bring GMs together and for them to sort of share ideas and, integrate with head office? And, is there a sort of working method that helps kind of unlock the latent creativity that exists in the group?
We're consistently bringing all of our senior leadership teams back, around the world. We do calls more frequently than travel, because it's obviously easier nowadays to get everybody on a call. But there's consistent feedback loops and cycles, and also the way that our organization is structured is that we have regional groups, so the GMs are constantly feeding off one another. And as I said earlier, I think GMs are move around from property to property, so you get to have a learning from one location that gets imported or exported to another. I think that's something that we do well, but we can always do better.
Yeah. People are always talking about how like the hospitality industry, it's growing, and it's sort of one of the fastest growing sectors there is, and it always strikes me that people at conferences like to talk about growth.
Yep.
But growth is quite often not a good thing for a brand, because it creates more noise and
dilution.
And dilution, exactly. And it's harder to differentiate the more people that are on a market. But also it's great if you're a startup, because you know that you're latching onto the coattails of industry. It's growing, and hard if you're a large organization. It's not easy running a large organization. You can't just change things from one day to the next. You can't innovate because you can't alienate the majority of where your revenue comes from and the customers who that involves. So what are the challenges that you've seen that are like fresh challenges that have become harder as the organization has grown?
Oh, that's a great question. I think ensuring that we have, as I was speaking about earlier, a full understanding across the entire organization around that brand story, because it's the main thing that sets us apart. I think also whenever you go into a new market, and I'm sure this is the case for almost any industry, you're always going to be going into a market with some level of cloud as to what to expect. You can prepare and you can hypothesize and you can look at the data, until the cows come home. But I think there's always going to be a certain degree of, is this going to work, in the back of your mind? And so I think that having that trust in the fact that we know what we're doing really, really well, and we have great leadership and we have great team members and we have great colleagues, I think that's what it will continue to give us success as we move forward, and being strategic about where we grow.
Alex, you've worked on my side of the table.
Yes.
Actually, it sort of makes you a great client. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What are the things that if you work on my side of the table, you don't know about what your role involves? And what I mean by that is, what were the things where you were like, okay, I think you could be quite blinkered on our side of the table sometimes, and
I think that
agencies can be like a bit into themselves,
Well, agencies, I think that's one of the good things we've had this conversation before. There are agencies that are out to win awards, and then there are agencies that are out to do great work. And I think that, finding partners who are out to do great work, the awards will follow. If you do great work, awards will follow. But chasing awards, you never gain success. I think that what the biggest gap between both sides of the table, and you kind of touched upon this a little bit earlier in terms of what it takes to move a large organization. When you're on the agency side of the table, oftentimes you're working with one primary point of contact as a client and potentially a team of, let's say, 5 people.
Yeah.
So your interactions are quite siloed. You can make quick decisions.
Yeah.
You can structure thinking, and you can see a real pace to your delivery. Oftentimes, not always. On our side of the table, in the institution side of the table, implementing those things you're working on can oftentimes take months, years. You're having to move an ocean liner, let alone move a nimble little boat.
Tanker, as the old expression goes.
Exactly, and I think that's where oftentimes agency partners who don't have an understanding of this industry, especially, struggle with, because there's inherently the question of why can't you implement that? And I think if more people understood the level of change management that's required, I think that's something that could really help us as we move forward.
Yeah, it is really interesting that we do an internal podcast. We had the head of strategy at Jaguar Land Rover come in a couple of weeks ago, and talk about how complex the OEM industry is. It's just a highly complicated. From design to implementation, you're talking 6+ years, and how hard it can be to work with consultancies who obviously like to offer big ideas, but the big idea, if it's not connected to some sort of sense of a Gantt chart that goes beyond the scope, is just an idea.
Yeah. Right? And I think with luxury hospitality in general, but luxury hospitality especially, it's not just one business. We're a conglomerate of multiple businesses. We have stays, we have transportation logistics, we have food and beverage, we have experience design, we have entertainment, we have architectural design, we have property development. I mean, all of those businesses are industries unto themselves, and we have all of them underneath one roof.
What if Jumeirah was to suddenly be in an entirely different sector? What sector do you think it would win in? It's a pretty bizarre question.
That's a great question. I think Jumeirah could win in almost any sector.
If Jumeirah made shoes?
It could win.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What type of shoes do you think they'd be?
Luxury shoes.
Very pointy high heels.
Yeah, very. But no, I think that we could be successful in a lot of industries because we have incredible talent from lots of industries already working, within our organization. Yeah. We have incredible interior designers. We have incredible architects. We have incredible marketeers who could take their practice to any number of products. So our finance teams are brilliant.
Yeah.
So I don't think that, I think it would just be where we wanted to focus rather than what we wanted to focus on.
Yeah, I guess you're set up as an organization who have to operate creativity.
Yeah.
And
bring it to life.
Do you know what I mean? And so it's doesn't matter what form that creativity eventually takes.
Yeah.
It's got to be operationalized effectively, but with also license for autonomy where required.
I mean, we have collateral, we have OS&E bags that we're designing. And we're going through sampling, we're going through manufacturing, we're going through go-to-market strategies, for any number of different components within our business. And so I think that, we could really, I think hospitality could do.
What type of bags are they?
Bags for our guests, whether they be street bags for London, or the beach bags for Dubai, or ski bags, or safari bags, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could change one thing about your industry, what would you change?
Social media. I would turn off social media. I think that we...
Do you work with influencers and things like that at Jumeirah? And I guess you have to.
Yeah, we do. We have to. I think that inherently the idea of influencers or people of influence or experts is somewhat required in today's marketing age.
I know. I think influencer basically generates it's got a picture associated with it, doesn't it? But it's actually, there are many forms of influence.
Yeah, and I'd say that, and that's maybe why I sort of hesitated on the answer, because it's sort of a yes and no. If the influencer, I'm not sure if you've seen the Instagram account, Influencers in the Wild. It's a,
No,
it's a
but
great
send it to
it's
me
a great
afterwards.
it's a great parody account. You should definitely follow it. It's good for a laugh. But that level of sort of self-indulgence, influences for self-indulgence
Yeah.
is less so. But there are people who have influence within microcultures, and we want to make sure that we're speaking to the right audience.
Those are really powerful ones,
Yeah.
right? You know, when you can find something that's sort of fit between a niche
Yeah.
and your proposition.
I think that
And you can learn a lot from like just the data analysis and like where audiences exist.
Yeah.
I remember years ago working with a hotel group in Cyprus, and they wanted to stay open a bit longer, and we realized that the conditions perfect for people training for triathlons, you know, and so
and then
just
there you go.
marketing the proposition, adding bike lockers. I can't remember what it was. It was like a minor like twist on the product that made it feel like it was intentionally tailored for that market. You know, just allowed them to realize revenue for a period of time when they were already paying for staff because they had to because of local legislation.
And you know, we were speaking earlier about why people gravitate towards podcasts, but I think a component to add on what we were saying is that people are looking for like-minded authorities. They want, you know, they believe in something, they have a group that they're connected to, they may be running triathlons, they may be into fashion, they may be into any number of things. And so, you know, forcing yourself into a conversation or in front of an individual is never going to work. But working with somebody who has authority in that space and working with them in the right way. You know, we want to make sure that we're working with people who have stayed with us. We want to make sure that we're working with people who genuinely believe in our brand. I think that's a great way to reach audiences around the world. I'd like to see the industry. What else would I like to change about the industry? I think probably as a whole, see what we could do more in the space of sustainability. I'd like to see us embrace digital technology in really new and interesting ways. I'd like to remind ourselves, I think, a little bit that we actually have the opportunity to shape, not follow culture as well.
Totally.
I think that we sell a very interesting product. It's an incredibly expensive product. It's one that when you purchase it, you don't get it. You often have to wait 2, 3, 5 weeks before you're actually going to experience it. Then you experience it for, let's say, 5 days, and then you leave it behind. But we're also, if you flip the switch on that perspective, we're selling the product that people go home about and over Christmas dinner tell their friends about. And we create the moments where they're the stories that you keep telling, and you go back to, you know, years and years later, and you say, "Remember when we were," and so I think that if you have that perspective, you realize that actually we could define a lot more, and we could shape a lot more, and we could be bolder. And I think that that's something our industry could do further.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally like stretching time. You know, you're kind of recalibrating like a sense of things. You know, like how 4 days can feel so meaningful, and stand out in 40 days that are homogenous. You know, so
and how can you make 4 or 5 days feel like 5 weeks?
Yeah.
At the same time as also make it feel like 5 weeks that you were fully engaged in, and you got so much out of, and that's very difficult. So.
I mean, I guess this question's maybe too linked to the previous answer, but what concerns you about the world we're leaving the kids?
Well, I think that, you know, the easy answer would probably be the environment.
Yeah,
and I think that probably a lot of people would say that, right? And I think the flip side of the easy answer would be social media and the dependency on social media that especially young people today have. Although I do think that we're seeing a resurgence of sort of the anti-social media, especially from a much younger generation, which is good. The harder answer, what we're leaving the kids, societal divides. I think the loss of the art of compromise. I think that we're living in an increasingly polarized world. And what we were talking about earlier of these sort of groups or sort of finding your tribe, I think it's excellent that you can do that. But I think at the same time, again, to the mercy of algorithms, potentially, you can also wrap yourself in a bubble of only like-minded people. And if we go back to our earlier part of the conversation, you learn so much more from people who are different than you. And I think that that's something that, you know, moving forward, I think that is going to be concerning for the world. Also, electric cars. I know it's better for the planet, but there's something about driving an engine that's...
It's it's such a utility, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so boring.
Yeah, it's just
They are quite fun. I mean, it's like wild how fast they are.
it's incredible how fast they are, but there's just something about an engine. I mean, I ride motorcycles, and I just think this idea of that vibration and the noise. I think there's sure we need to save the world, but if we could replicate that in some capacity, that's the challenge for Harley Davidson or a Triumph.
Look, I think sustainable cars long term are a good thing, but like I think like PCP financing is probably more detrimental to the environment because everyone now treats their car like a mobile phone and changes it every 4 years.
Yeah.
And like changing every car on the road, like within a 5-year window is like definitely bad.
Yeah.
And like having massive flat screens that date your car within 18 months because it looks, even if it's a perfectly good car, like it's 10 years old is a bad thing. You know?
And all
I think there are like weird nuance is my point. I mean, they're all...
There's a shade of grey to everything. And I think that's one of the things that... one of the things we fall into this trap of the answer being left or right, and it's never really left or right. It's always a shade of grey in the in between. And yeah, if we can keep some form of petrol engines, I think that would be quite good for the next generation.
Yeah.
Also, this idea of being able to sort of, I think that's one thing that you ride motorcycles. I think that one thing about motorcycles is that oftentimes the engine is just right there. It's very visible. And so this idea that you can fix it. I mean, if I opened up the bonnet of an electric car, I wouldn't know where to start. And so this idea of being able to get your hands dirty and fix things is quite a lost art.
Zen in the art of motorbike maintenance. It's all about that, putting the engine on the kitchen table.
I mean, that was a book I really struggled to read.
Really?
Yeah.
I loved it.
It was a great book, but by the end of it, I was very lost. I'm not going to lie.
I love it. Alex, if you had to give up your job
Tomorrow?
Next Monday,
okay.
what would you do?
I'd go spend some time with my mum and dad. I think that time is too short, so I'd go spend some time with them.
Are they in the States?
They're in the States, yeah, on the East Coast. Lovely part of the world. I think I would ride a motorcycle through Europe. I think I would spend some time, riding a motorcycle through Europe. I think I'd spend some time enjoying moments.
Why through Europe?
I think that, well, for a motorcycle enthusiast, it's got some of the best roads in the entire world in terms of traveling. But I also think that you can move very quickly through very, very different experiences. I mean, being in southern Spain or being in the Swiss Alps or being in North Holland, for example, the experiences that you'd get on that kind of journey would be really fun.
Yeah.
And I think that we don't get often time to do that. So if you've got rid of me on Monday, then I think I go take a journey, go take some time, travel. And then I'd probably start a business, but not sure what I'd do. Maybe design
motorbikes.
Design better electric motorbikes. Yeah, not devices.
Alex, what is the most exciting thing for you in the next 5 years?
I think two things. Number one, two things professionally. I'll just keep it strictly professional. Okay. Personal, we can discuss over a whiskey. Yeah. But two things professionally. I think that the growth that we are embarking on is really exciting, and so it's a tremendous pleasure to be a part of that growth because it really is significant. And then I think the second piece is that I think we are right on the edge of some pretty serious advancements in technology. I think that what we've seen over the last 18 months or so and I'm glad that we haven't discussed AI today because I think it's an overindulged topic, but the effects of AI type technology and big data, I think we're right on the cusp of really powerful advancements in technology. And so I'm not entirely sure what that will bring, but I do think that will bring major advancements in what we're able to do for our guests, and I think that's really exciting. So those would be the two things that sort of.
I mean, you're a brand in a way that kind of seems to be flexible enough to both embrace technology and human service in a way that's sort of unique. Do you know what I mean? You're not too rooted in either direction.
Well, I think we're young enough to be that way. If we were a more legacy brand, I think we would struggle.
But it's funny because you don't feel new because of the because the architecture, the architecture of Jumeirah it's quite iconic within Dubai. You know,
Yes.
the properties. I haven't been to Mallorca and this type. They're places that when they weather will feel like places of future historical significance.
I mean, the Jumeirah Burj Al Arab is 25 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, that building looks as good now as it did when it first opened its doors, and just where it is on the skyline of this city is, I think, incredible. And so, I do think that we have an amazing advantage when it comes to that brand recognition, but at the same time, we have that immense flexibility to adapt to what's coming. And so, that's a really unique position to be in, but it's an exciting one to be in as well.
Alex, thank you so much. That's
Thank you.
Lovely place to end.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening. This has been What the Lux. You can find us on socials at @Matchreform, and drop us any questions or comments on Twitter using the hashtag #WhatTheLux. Or if you're a luxury brand looking for strategy and design that goes beyond the banal, get in touch via hello@matchreform.com and chat to one of our consultants.